Not even a werewolf can resist Corey Haim in the 80s. So Silver Bullet tells the story of a paralyzed child who finds out that a werewolf is preying upon his small town. Welcome to another Patreon request, everybody. This one is actually brought to you by two separate patrons who requested the same movie. You've got Jason Nike, who's been a supporter of mine for quite a while, as well as Brat Queen. They both requested Silver Bullet. This is a movie that I wish I would have grown up with, because there is a lot of things that I love about this film that I'll get into. Definitely some flaws, but it's a film that I have a lot of things that I love about, and it would have been one of my favorite films growing up. But it was always a hard film to find. It was still a very hard film to find. And then eventually we have the Scream Factory release. So that just came out a couple of weeks ago. I finally got a hold of it, rewatched the movie. Now it is time to talk about Silver Bullet. So this is based off of a Stephen King story that actually was never a book. It at first had featured on a calendar, believe it or not. And oddly enough, one of the coolest pieces of behind the scenes things that you could find out about this movie, especially for me as a Phantasm fanatic, is that Phantasm creator Don Coscarelli was actually the one who was supposed to make this movie. He was signed on by the producer, he had the story, he was adapting the story into a script, and just kept coming up with production problems between him and the producer. The producer couldn't quite read in English, so there was some translation issues there. All the things that Don Coscarelli kind of wanted to tweak and change, the producer wasn't really a big fan of. The things that the producer wanted to do, Don Coscarelli wasn't quite a fan of. Eventually, they actually brought in Stephen King to kind of give them some pointers, some little fixes in the script that they were coming up with issues with, and King sent them a 3-page, single-spaced little document with all of the fixes to all the script problems that they had, and the producer still didn't want to use any of it. So Don Coscarelli eventually ended up leaving the project. I found one source that said that he had filmed all the non-werewolf scenes, which I don't believe, because the director is actually accredited to somebody else that's non-Don Coscarelli, but nonetheless, he worked on this film to a point in the pre-production and eventually left the film altogether. And my God, just thinking about what a Don Coscarelli directed, Stephen King written movie about a werewolf could have been, makes me really salivate. But the movie that we got is still a movie that I really enjoy. So starting off with the positives for Silver Bullet, Silver Bullet just has that nice classic Stephen King feel to where you get a lot of different elements here, where you have the horror elements, you have the darker elements, but you also have really great characters. You have some coming of age, you have a family dynamic that kind of is what is being repaired in order to overcome the beast. There's a lot of different themes that come in here regarding family ties and the overall, placement of the soul with the afterlife and what is evil. And it asks a lot of subtle questions here that I think makes for just a great story overall. Another huge thing that I love in this film is the characters. You've got Corey Haim, who is playing the main character of this child who has been, I believe he's a paraplegic, but he doesn't have use of his legs. He's got a wheelchair, and his uncle, played by Gary Busey, who's pretty much the second biggest character in this movie. They have a bit of a tight relationship to where Gary Busey builds these little motorized wheelchairs for him called Silver Bullet, to where it's a wheelchair, but it might as well be a motorcycle. He's running around, it's got a motor, and eventually he gets the upgraded one, the actual Silver Bullet that's badass. I would have wanted to have that when I was a kid, but it's a really cool dynamic where you have this very likable Corey Haim as a young kid in the 80s, which is one of the most charming actors from the 80s. I'm a huge fan of the movie Lucas. He had a lot of that dynamic here with this character here, but you get young Corey Haim that just is adorable in this character to where you just love him and you immediately want him to succeed, and it's just a very charming character paired with Gary Busey, who's just kind of like this cool, crazy uncle. And Gary Busey even got a lot of freedom to be able to ad-lib most of his lines in this movie, so a lot of it feels very natural, like this very natural chemistry between these two characters, like a paralyzed kid and his loving uncle actually would have. So their character dynamic, as well as a little bit with his sister, which is something I'll probably get into a little bit in another segment of this review, but even the relationship with his sister, who he kind of has a rocky relationship with, it's the family dynamic and the complicatedness of the different relationships, including their mother not wanting them to be around their uncle because he's a little cuckoo, and all of that really makes this movie more enjoyable than it probably should be. And I also like the motives of the actual villain in this film. Whenever the identity of the werewolf is revealed and his motives for why he's killing certain people, they don't quite go into it as much as they should. I will say that, so maybe this is more kind of leaning into the mix, but it is something that I do like. It's unique that his motivations for why he is killing people in their physical form, it's something unique. I'm not going to spoil it because a lot of people have not seen this film, and I encourage you to seek out the Scream Factory edition, or if there's a digital edition available online, to check it out, because I enjoy it and I am going to recommend this film. But the motivations for the werewolf was something unique to me that also gives this film a nice little flavor. Now, actually moving into my mixed aspects of this film, the main one is the relationship between Corey Haim's character and his sister. Now, the whole movie is kind of framed around their relationship. You have the sister as an older woman who's kind of the one narrating the story, and the story is supposed to be told from her perspective to a certain extent. And throughout the film, it's supposed to be about them having a rocky, brother and sister antagonistic headbutting relationship, that through the murders going around town and through finding out about this werewolf and having to defend themselves and kill the werewolf and all of the stuff that goes through the story of the movie brings them together, and they realize how much they actually love each other. That's there, but they don't explore it or focus on it nearly enough, in my opinion. Everything that they explore is great, but I feel like you almost get more of a sense of a relationship focus between Gary Busey and Corey Haim than between his sister and Corey Haim. And there's even aspects to where they have to both melt down their own necklaces to make the silver bullet, so kind of symbolically they're coming together to make the weapon to destroy the evil. And the story is there, the theme is there of the family coming together and fixing a broken relationship in the time of peril, but there just should have been more focus of it. It almost feels like the sister's a bit of an afterthought after Gary Busey and Corey Haim. And to me, there should be another 15 minutes of this movie where it just buds their relationship a little bit more and maybe takes the focus a little bit more onto that. Otherwise, the narration and the thematic element of family coming together, when it does come in, it almost feels tacked on to a degree. And now moving on to the negatives, of which I have two. The one is the most easy thing that you can say against this movie, and it's the thing that it's kind of famous for people not liking, including Don Coscarelli and some of the people involved with the production of the film, and that is the design of the werewolf. I believe Stephen King and one of the producers were really adamant about a specific design about this werewolf, at least from what I can read. Can't believe everything you see on the internet, but from the little bit of research I was able to do, King and one of the producers wanted this different look to their werewolf, almost like a wild bear, not like all the American Werewolf in Londons and everything that was kind of taking a lot of place in the 80s. They wanted something different, and the design doesn't work at all. The main producer of the film, and from what I read, Don Coscarelli, hated the design, and that was also part of the reason why he left the film. But it was to the point where they were so adamant about this design that they gave the main producer an ultimatum of either use this design or cancel the film. And so he just kept on trucking with this design, and time has not been kind to it, because anybody that even loves this movie will say that werewolf looks like shit. There's scenes where they keep him in the shadows and they just show the eyes, or they just show pieces of it, and even some of the transformation effects look pretty good. There's a scene where the whole town in a dream sequence starts to turn into werewolves. It's actually pretty cool. But whenever they focus on the actual werewolf, it does look like a weird drunk bear, and it just, yeah. And the other one is that this film definitely is not a scary film. It's an enjoyable film. I have fun with it, and I really do love to death this movie, and it's one of my favorite werewolf films, but it is not what I would call a scary or a tense or an exciting film to where it's it has the thrills there. It certainly leans much more onto the coming of age and the family dynamic than it does trying to scare you. Now, there's some pretty brutal sequences as far as some kills here. They're dated to a degree. Certainly some effects from the time can be shown, but it is a bloody movie as far as some of the kills. But it's not a scary film. You don't feel afraid of the werewolf. You don't feel like you're really afraid for the protagonist's lives. You don't feel like they're in any kind of peril. And if you're in the mood for that type of movie, you will notice it, and it will knock this back a few points for you. But overall, guys, I think this is a nice little hidden gem. It's certainly one of the more cult classic werewolf films, to where for the longest time you could barely even find the damn thing. But now that we have the Scream Factory release, do yourself a favor. If you love werewolves, if you love Stephen King, check this thing out, because despite some of the shortcomings of the time and of the budget and of the design, it's a nice little heartwarming family film with some werewolf action thrown in. So if you're a fan of King, werewolves, Corey Haim, Gary Busey, or if I've just sold you on this movie, absolutely check this thing out. Get the Scream Factory edition and add this to your collection. Go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of Silver Bullet? Are you a fan of this film? Have you never liked it? Does the werewolf design really hold this back for you? Do you want to see the Don Coscarelli version of this film? Or are you somebody that hates Phantasm and every time I bring it up, you're like, ugh? Let me know down in the comments section below. Thank you, Jason, Nike, and Brat Queen for suggesting this and for your support on Patreon. Guys, if you want to join Jason or Brat Queen in the fun and be able to request reviews or even get some of the exclusive content that I post over there and Blu-ray digital copy codes and everything that I give straight to my patrons, check out my Patreon page. Scroll down to the video description, click that, and the link is down there. If you want to become a patron, a lot of cool stuff over there, and it really is the biggest help for this channel and keeping this channel alive and helping me expand things and get better every single day. So thank you guys for your support as always. Like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. Also down in the video description with the Patreon link is some social media links like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Scroll down just a little bit more, you'll see my Teespring store. It's got all my merchandise designs, all my t-shirt designs, a lot of great stuff created by my buddy Woody Bowen. Check all of that out. And as always, guys, if you want to check out some more of my reviews, you can check those out by clicking right over here.